Alright, man, why don't you take a seat? I'm gonna keep it real with you, and this is a little uncomfortable, but if you don't make some changes today, the life you want, the person you want to become, is going to pass you by. If you've been waiting for a sign or a slap in the face, understand this is it. The longer you wait, the more these bad habits calcify, the more comfortable they become, and the farther away that life you want drifts. And I'm not saying I've got it all figured out, trust me, I don't. I'm making this as much for myself as I am for you. But if we keep letting our habits, our vices, make our decisions for us, there's a lot more at stake than you may even realize. I believe the greatest thing standing between you and the life you want may not be what's happening in the world around you. It's not always the hand you've been dealt. What if it's what's happening within you? Here's a scenario for you. An alcoholic reaches for the bottle to drown his stress, his anxiety, all the unresolved issues he's never properly dealt with. Eventually, that bottle costs him his wife, his relationship with his kids. Eventually, it costs him his job. It could even cost him his house. And yet, to cope with the loss and numb the pain, where does he turn? Right back to the bottle. Now, every sane person in the room will ask, why? Hell, he's probably asking himself the same thing. Of course, this is not exactly a new issue for us humans. In fact, there's an ancient proverb that describes this exact behavior. It's Proverbs 26:11. As a dog returns to its vomit, so fools repeat their folly. Now, that's disgusting, but it's supposed to be, because this is that thing that you've already rejected. You already know it makes you sick, and yet still, you go back. And before we judge the alcoholic too harshly, what about you, bucko? How many of us are doing this exact same thing? You hate what you see in the mirror, and yet you still binge eat to quiet that voice in your head. You're lonely, and yet you keep substituting pornography for genuine attempts at human connection. You feel disconnected and isolated, yet you spend hours doom-scrolling through a feed that leaves you drained. You're overwhelmed by everything you need to do, so you escape into entertainment, exacerbating the problem for tomorrow. That promise you made to your kid to stop smoking echoes through your head as you light up another cigarette. We all have our thing. Many of us have several. And if we look honestly at the behavior, most of us hate it. This is a source of shame. We know they're harmful. So maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe it's not just, how do I stop doing this, but more so, why do I keep wanting to? Because the behavior is often just a symptom, an outward manifestation of a much deeper problem. To visualize it, the behavior is the fruit, but desire is the root. Now, how many of you are convinced that this problem is solved? No, you can't just address the fruit. You need to dig up the root, or it will keep producing. For most of us, it's not as simple as saying, I need to stop drinking, because it doesn't solve the problem of what you're actually seeking. Like the alcoholic, the binge eater may just be seeking comfort, to numb themselves instead of allowing emotional discomfort, to quiet the voice in their head. The porn addict may just be lonely, reaching out for intimacy and connection, however momentary, fleeting, and hollow. Our doom-scrolling, avoidant friend is just checking out, escaping into a break from stress, even if it creates more down the road. Maybe you sabotage your relationships to relieve the anxiety of potential future rejection. At least you got to choose, but now you're alone again. You're probably not returning because you love what the habit is doing to your life. I'll bet you don't envision these behaviors as being even remotely compatible with your desired future, but you're returning because, right now, for a little while, it gives you something you desperately want. And I hate when people dance around that truth, afraid to validate that we get something from this exchange. Of course we do. The reward is 100% real, and it usually requires basically no effort. That makes it incredibly easy to fall into this habitual loop. There's a trigger, anxiety, stress, rejection, whatever it is, so you turn to this routine behavior, and you get a little splash of reward. This reinforces the loop and causes these habits to solidify more over time, and every time you complete that loop, you're making the path a little easier to walk next time. Until eventually, something you used to choose starts feeling like something you simply do, even when part of you is screaming that you shouldn't. And that's where this becomes bigger than just a bad habit, because every pattern in your life has a destination. One bad night usually isn't going to ruin your life. One cigarette, one drink probably won't take you out. It's when you make the same mistake Tuesday that you just made on Monday, and then again on Wednesday, and next week. Another month, years pass. If you don't change now, where does this actually lead? You only get to live one time. You only get one shot at it, one opportunity. Your kids only grow up one time. Do you really want this to be a part of it? Is this who you want to be? Okay, that's all fine, you may be thinking, but what do we do about it? There's a reason we're stuck in these ruts. We may know where this leads, but then why is changing directions so damn hard? And I think it's just that we're kind of wired to choose the path of least resistance, to choose a familiar misery over an unfamiliar change, especially when that change requires pain and effort. At times, you're going to be fighting some pretty basic human reward-seeking instincts. Our brains weren't exactly built for a world where intensely rewarding stimuli are available instantly, endlessly, and for basically no effort. Calorie-dense food was useful when calories were hard to come by. Your brain doesn't know you're sitting in a McDonald's drive-thru. Sexual desire exists for a pretty obvious biological reason. Your brain doesn't know you're watching porn. We've gotten incredibly good at giving ancient appetites things they were never designed to have in unlimited quantities. If you really want to change, to take back control, you need to face the real root desire behind your destructive behavioral cycles. You need to stare that desire in the face, and sometimes choose to sit with the discomfort instead of immediately silencing it. Put your phone away. The fact is, you will never change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. But it's not quite as simple as just stopping the behavior or even confronting that desire. Despite what an alpha male influencer might say, you can't just suffer through it forever. That's not a realistic approach that, let's call it what it is, an addict is going to stick to. Because if the binge eating was giving temporary comfort, porn was providing pseudo-intimacy, and doomscrolling was providing a zombified escape, you eventually need to find healthier ways of satisfying the underlying desire. Removing your vice leaves a hole. What are you going to put there instead? I think our culture is sick, and perhaps a little backwards at times. We often define freedom through access. Unlimited and immediate access to whatever you may desire. That's the truest definition of freedom, right? But if you can't say no to any of it, how free are you really? Have you ever lost half an hour or more scrolling an algorithmic feed literally without even realizing it? Yes, most of us have. It's what they're engineered to do. If the phone controls your attention, porn controls your sexuality, food controls your comfort, and entertainment invades every quiet moment you would otherwise have to reflect on your life, those aren't expressions of freedom anymore. They're chains. Maybe you're lonely because you need people, so call somebody, join something. You have to accept some possibility of rejection if you ever wish to find real connection. Maybe you're overwhelmed because your life genuinely needs structure, not another 4-hour escape from it. Maybe you're restless because some part of you knows you're capable of building something better than the routine that you've settled into. Real freedom isn't unlimited permission to satisfy every appetite. It's becoming the kind of person who can choose to tell those appetites no, because you're aiming at something more important. This is one reason that pursuing faith has started to make more sense to me. Hear me out for just a second. You stuck around this long. From the outside, the structure can look restrictive. The discipline, the personal sacrifices involved, it may not look like freedom. But there's something almost paradoxical here. Because it's that structure that ultimately sets you free. It's the boundaries that keep you on the path to where you want to go, instead of being lured back into chains by the sickly sweet seduction of total access. orienting your life towards something greater, yes, like faith, but also pursuing family, responsibility, service, and sculpting your body and mind to be resilient in the face of temptation. The goal isn't to become someone who never enjoys anything. It's to become someone whose appetites no longer decide where their life is going. Now, speaking practically, that means making the better path easier to walk. Identify the triggers and figure out the true underlying desires. Decide ahead of time what you're going to do instead. Put some friction between yourself and the vice. Delete the app. Don't keep the junk food in the house. Move the phone out of the bedroom. Just stop relying on willpower that has repeatedly failed. Change your environment instead. And then build structure around the life you actually want. Real relationships, exercise, faith, family, creative pursuits, whatever gives your life direction. Try to live your life as if you are in the shoes of the person that you want to be. You don't break a destructive cycle by just saying no harder. You make the bad path harder to access and the better path easier to choose. And if trying harder just isn't working, maybe consider walking into a church sometime. Give faith an honest chance. I know, but hear me out. I struggle with this piece myself sometimes. I don't have every answer, and not all churches are great, but some of them really are. But there's just no denying that for millions of people, pursuing Christ is the one thing that finally made the difference when, for years, nothing else worked. It's not just a good source of structure, but also a positive community to be a part of. You're so much more vulnerable when you're alone. I think there's something worth exploring there, and if you've been nodding along in agreement up until now, then rolled your eyes when religion was mentioned, this whole thing was inspired by a sermon, so maybe you'd get more out of it than you think. Just saying. At the end of the day, you already know where the road you're on leads. You know that disgusting feeling of feeding that habitual cycle, reinforcing that same routine, while telling yourself you really need to change. The path to real freedom may be harder, at least at first. It will ask more of you, but it actually leads somewhere worth going. You're going to stumble, it's not going to be perfect, but you gotta keep going, and I want you to start today. Proverbs says the fool returns to his folly like a dog to its vomit. But the dog doesn't know any better. You do.